Welcome, everybody, to my podcast. I'm actually going to be sharing this on two channels, so we're not going to say what podcast it's on, or we'll say both. It's Mindful Recoveries and Mindful Mail. Paula's got really good information for everybody, and I want to make sure as many people can hear it as possible. And Paula, who are you?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you want my creds, ma'am?
Yeah, what do you got?
Well, I'm a mediator, I'm a minister, I'm a mom, I'm a marketer. That's about it.
What kind of minister?
I am an independent unity minister. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, I belong nowhere, but I have a center that used to meet, in an actual place in Cocoa Village called the Village Gathering. And now we meet virtually and then at our home here in Denver on Thursday nights. And we meet virtually Friday mornings as well.
Yeah. And I
Yep.
forgot, do you want to pray?
Nah, I'm always
No?
praying. Every word's a prayer.
Okay. I was going to try to duplicate what you do Thursdays.
You're so sweet.
Yeah. Well, tell us about your story. You said you're a minister. And one of the things I like to give to people is hope for recovery, financially, spiritually, whatever the topic is. And I know you have some recovery stories to share
I
with
do.
different issues. So you grew up in, was it Indiana or Illinois?
Illinois.
Illinois,
I was
right?
born in Indiana, but I grew up in Illinois outside of Chicago. And
Mm-hmm.
my dad had killed himself when I was just 2 months before I turned 4. So I had a lot of issues around that and thought like suicide was a viable option. So kept trying to off myself from the time I was 8 years old until I was 21 when I got sober. So like I never even got to really hang out at the bars and stuff. I got sober before it was legal to be out there drinking. But yeah, just I spent 4 days in a coma and had 3 cardiac arrests, and I was really fortunate. About 6 months after that incident, which landed me in the Elmhurst General Hospital, a New York City hospital psych ward. Don't recommend it to anybody. It was a very creepy place.
They
But I
all
remember
are.
telling my therapist, she was like, I'm sitting here with an order to, have you committed to Bellevue, because this is like the last straw kind of thing. And I distinctly remember saying to her, I said, can you call me back in 20 minutes? I have to think about it. That's how screwed up I was mentally. I was just like, but I had the good fortune about 6 months later, I twisted my ankle in a softball game, an AA softball game, and wound up in the same emergency ward. And this guy just keeps looking at me. He's like looking at my folder, looking at me, looking at my folder, looking at me. He goes, you don't remember me, do you? And I'm like, what did I do? I don't remember dating a doctor. And he said that he was the doctor on call when I came in unconscious after my drug overdose. And they tried 4 times, and the other doctor was like, just give up. Even if we get her started again, because my heart had stopped, she's just going to try and kill herself again. So just, whatever. And he's like, no, we have to try one more time. And that's what started my heart beating again.
How long were you
And
dead for? I didn't know you actually died.
yeah, so I don't know how long they were working on me. I'm assuming an hour or so. They just kept trying, and it would start and then stop again and start and then stop again. There was so much drugs in my system. But I was in a coma for 4 days. I came out of it on my 21st birthday.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You were reborn.
Oh yeah. And they were like, do you know who the president is? I'm like, Ronald Reagan. And there's like, do you know what day it is? And I was like, not really. And they were like, it's August 17th. And smart ass that I am, I went, well, aren't you going to wish me a happy birthday?
Did they? Did they buy
Oh
you a
yeah,
cake?
they did. They did. But I looked
Hospital
like I
cake?
was 9 months pregnant. They'd pumped so much charcoal in my system, in
Oh,
my
to
stomach.
absorb.
Oh yeah, it was just like,
What drug was
yeah.
that?
God, I don't remember. It was Ativan and a bunch of other whatever prescriptions I had on hand. Like
You just
I
slammed them
was,
all.
yeah, I was seeing a therapist, but I was also seeing a psychiatrist in New York City, who was prescribing me. And my therapist kept saying 1 week at a time, 1 week at a time, just that much drugs. And every single time she would prescribe me for a month's worth. So every week I'd go in and get another month's worth of drugs. And I was like, sweet. So I just took them all. And they said that day I chose not to drink when I took all the drugs because I was afraid I'd throw them up. And the paramedic said that that's probably what saved my life was the fact that I hadn't had the alcohol at the same time.
You were serious though.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I just wanted everything to stop, just
Yeah.
wanted the peace and quiet. And yeah, so it was a little intense. But when
Yeah.
I woke up, it was fascinating because I think that's why I became a minister was when I came out, or I guess when I was in the coma, I distinctly felt the presence of my dad, who had died, and my great grandmother, who had passed away when I was 16, and she and I were very close. And I saw the tunnel, the whole 9 yards, and then they were like, okay, time for us to go now. We got to go back. And I was like, okay, great. I'm ready to go. And they're like, no, 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 you have to go back. And I was like, no. And they're like, no, you have things to do. I'm like, no, I'm complete. I'm good. And they were like, nope, you got to go back. And the next thing I know, I was back in my body and they were gone.
Hmm.
But I also felt the presence of what I call Jesus. I mean, it was just amazing, bright light. It was so beautiful and relaxing and safe and loving. And I was just like, I'm good. Let's go, And I came back and I was like, okay, what's mine to do now? So
you had a whole different attitude.
oh yeah.
Sounds like you had a whole mental cleansing, like this whole wash of the mind kind of.
Yeah. And I wasn't afraid of dying anymore, which meant I wasn't afraid of living. So it was kind of a cool thing. I was like, okay, I'm just going to do what's mine to do, for as long as I'm here.
Yeah.
So
But you didn't go to college, right?
I did. I went to Grinnell College, but I dropped out after 2 years because I came out shortly. I got to college and I turned 18 a few weeks later. And then I came out and my parents threatened to come get me. It was back in the day when, they wanted to stick me in a psych ward and give me
You
some
came out
electroshock.
sexuality
I
wise?
came out as a lesbian. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they, were threatening to have someone come and get me. And the school was like, you're an adult. What do you want to do? I'm like, I want to stay. But they cut me off financially, so I couldn't afford. So I managed to go a semester and a half at Grinnell, and then I had to drop out. And then I went to NYU for about a year. But then I had to choose because right about then was when I got sober. So it was like stay in school or stay sober. And so I chose stay sober. So
Was that one of the
15
motivations?
degrees shy of my bachelor's degree.
15 credits?
15 credits, yeah. 15
Oh
credits,
no.
sorry. Yeah.
That's like three classes.
Oh yeah. And one of them is writing 101. So I'm like, really? I'm going to pay $1,000 to take a writing course?
I wish my classes were only $1,000.
Yeah.
No, I'm learning college is not so much about the information, but self-discipline and like doing things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And how that gives you rewards sometimes.
Yep.
That's what I'm learning about college.
Well, it's funny because as a mediator, if I wanted to teach, which I has always been on my list to be a college professor to do mediation and negotiation, I'd have to have not only my bachelor's but a master's. Yet I've been asked to speak. I've been a guest lecturer at different colleges for mediation classes, and I'm like, that's good enough. I don't need to be on faculty somewhere and have rules.
So is that what got you to New York? Was college and your sexuality? Was it a little of both, or?
No, so it was writing. So when I was at Grinnell, my third semester there, I submitted an article to a New York newspaper and they published it.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm big wig. So I dropped out of college and went to New York and became a writer.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
To get a New York publisher like that.
Yep.
What was the cost of living like there? That must have been scary.
Outrageous. Yeah. I shared, when I lived in Queens, I had a little tiny garden apartment. And then when I moved to New York, I lived in a loft. There were like 6 of us that lived in the loft. And then I finally got to, now the place is a NYU dorm. It was the old Washington Hotel. So it was literally like a 10 by 12 apartment that had a bathtub and a sink that was like this big and a closet. Like I couldn't, if my futon was flat, I couldn't open my little refrigerator. That's how tiny it was. And so I lived there. And I think back then that was like $350 or something a month. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, with like
now.
a 75-cent minimum wage or something.
Exactly. So I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna move to Maryland. So that's what I did. Moved to the DC area.
So were you like a freelance writer, or did you work for someone?
Yeah, freelance stringer, and then I became a columnist for a newspaper that's defunct now called the Baltimore Alternative, and then I later became their executive editor years later. But
Nice.
I syndicated myself because I was like, okay, I got to make more money than they were paying $25 a column. So I had a book review column and a movie review column, and then I syndicated it to like 8 or 10 different queer related. I love that word, queer. Um, Newspapers across the country. And then I had a column for a Chicago magazine called Hot Wire, um, doing video reviews, like collections of things that were thematic. That was a lot of fun. So, yeah.
Nice. And that was, you moved there. Did you move there post
Sobriety.
coma, like right
Yes,
after?
post coma. No, I stayed in New York for, I guess, almost a year, a little over a year. That whole don't do a geographic till you get your first year of sobriety. And then
Mm-hmm.
I moved to the DC area and just lived different areas, different places around there until I bought my house out by the Chesapeake.
Oh, I didn't know you had actually a house. I thought you had a boat.
No, that was after I lost my house in foreclosure. When I lost my job um, at a publishing company, and I used up all my savings. It was a HUD. That's why I'm so passionate about teaching people about financial stuff and how to negotiate things, because I used up all my savings to keep paying my mortgage, and then I called them up to tell them I wasn't going to be able to pay the next month's mortgage and why, and they were like, "Oh, we wish you'd called us a year ago. We have this program that would have frozen your mortgage payment for up to 3 years."
Up to 3 years?
Yeah, little known thing.
Yeah, I
So
didn't know
then,
that
yeah.
existed.
So then they put me in that program, but by then I'd used up all my savings, of course. And then they foreclosed because it was I forget what the name of the original company was that got into all sorts of trouble financially for things, but Aquin was new company backwards, and it was the same company. They just reinvented themselves, and they tried to demand the entire 3 years worth of
Oh yeah.
mortgage payments at one time. And by then I was working at the newspaper in Baltimore, and so my attorney said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Let them have it." So they foreclosed on the house, and we also signed an agreement that it would disappear off my credit report and I wouldn't sue them, because they were doing it to people all over the country. And so I moved up to Baltimore, and then after I left the newspaper, I lived on a houseboat. So that was a lot of
Yeah.
fun. Yeah.
I had like the exact same thing happen in 2000, what, 10? The Great Recession.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was I guess there was a big class action lawsuit like a year later because Wells Fargo had gotten a huge chunk of money from the government to make
Mm-hmm.
sure not to foreclose on people, and then they just did it anyway.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that was such a pain in the butt. Like if you called them and didn't use the very precise language, the legal language that they had on their own documents, they'd be like,
Oh
"No, we
yeah.
don't have anything like
Oh
that."
yeah. Yep. And it was fascinating because when all of that happened, between 2008 and 2010, 11, when everybody was losing their homes and stuff, I did a lot of negotiations because a lot of the companies were asking for a balance. After they sold it, you'd have to pay whatever was the remainder.
Hmm.
And so my negotiation was getting people out from under that. And I remember somebody paid me, and in 6 minutes, I had a resolution where the company agreed to completely make it go away. And the woman from the mortgage company from the bank was like, "How did you manage to my client?" And my client just slides my card across the table to her. She was like, "This lady, call
Yeah,
this lady."
I got lucky. They didn't do anything. I lost like 50 grand in value,
Yeah.
but after it was said and done, they're like, "You don't owe us anything." I was like, "Whew,
Yeah. Yeah.
thank God."
Yeah.
But
Because
I
that's
mean,
the
what are they
hardest.
gonna? Yeah, I mean, what are they gonna do? I looked 6 months ago. I looked at real estate in that same area, and it hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
And that's kind of weird. That
Yeah.
doesn't seem right. But
Well, it goes up and down and up and down. And like now, like even here in Denver, because there's been such a glut of new buildings built, even in the midst of the pandemic and stuff, that rental prices are going down, or at least the estimated
good.
amount of them, which is making them much more reasonable. So
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about going
It's
back
been
there.
crazy out here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about going back there. 'Cause I got stuff to take care of that you know
Yeah.
about. But,
Got some stuff to do.
stuff
Yeah.
to do. But
Yep.
yeah, me and Emily, and when we were in San Francisco, we were looking at going there and how much money we'd need to save, to
Yep.
get there and like provide for ourselves for a few months. And it was, I mean, it wasn't as bad as San Francisco, obviously,
Yeah.
but it was still like $25,000.
Oh yeah, it's outrageous. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. Like I
Time
like
we
it there.
moved
It's okay.
houses, it cost us almost $15,000 to move. So we're like, you know,
15,000. Oh,
yeah,
first
because we have
month,
to move
last month.
the business and yeah, first month, last month, and the moving fees. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Good things you guys got good jobs.
Yes. 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 And now we put our son to work. He did snow removal for 11 hours
I
Sunday.
saw that.
Oh yeah.
He was knocked out.
Oh, he did not wake up. So they got back at what, 3 in the afternoon Monday, and we did not see him. He did get up and pee apparently once, but he was not awake until almost 10 o'clock Tuesday morning.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's intense.
Yeah.
Tell
Thank
him
God
if
they
he
didn't
if
have
he
school.
if he takes all that money and changes it out for $1 bills, he'll feel really rich.
Oh, there you go. We'll pay him in dollars.
Yeah.
He
So
goes,
you recovered from alcoholism, death,
mm-hmm.
and sounds like financial
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
hardship. Were you completely bankrupt?
Oh, yeah. I went bankrupt. I was 21 when I went bankrupt. So in addition to getting sober, I was like, I gotta do this. And so I did that. And then I started, rebuilding. And that's how I bought my house and, all that stuff. And I had a friend in New York who was going through bankruptcy. And she was like, every week she'd call me, okay, what do I do about this? What do I do about this? And, I was commuting like an hour and a half to work. And she goes, okay, could you just write all this down? It'd be so much easier if you just like wrote a book about it. And, I could just read whatever I need to know. And so that's when I wrote the first edition of Bounce Back from Bankruptcy. And now it's in its fourth edition, which is pretty much outdated now as far as some of the contact information. But we're doing another smaller version like we did the first one because we sold them in bulk to bankruptcy attorneys so they could get them out to more people.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah, people will read a small book, like a 60-page book. They won't read a 250-page book. So
especially about bankruptcy. Like,
yeah,
gross.
So we're going back to the basics, and then I'll add on my website, we're going to start adding more of the updated content for people. So, updated links and numbers and information and stuff. Yeah. It's incredible how much difference it makes just to be able to help someone. Like I do a lot of pre-bankruptcy counseling, what we call. So attorneys, if there's someone that they don't think is a good candidate or they do think is a good candidate for bankruptcy, but the people are afraid for some reason, I'm an unbiased. It's not like I have any vested interest whether they do or don't declare bankruptcy like an attorney might. And so I've got attorneys who will refer people to me. And I'll be like, no, if you just do this, this, and this, you can avoid bankruptcy. But if this happens, then you're going to wind up, in bankruptcy and have this other issue. So I basically walk them through what their options are. And so people pay me to do that. I also help people restore their credit reports because there's so many scams out there. I help people figure out how to get your credit rating back up and take care of messy stuff that's on the credit report. So
yeah, it's way more delicate today because I have a similar story. I didn't die, unfortunately. No, just kidding.
Well, I'm glad I died, but was born again.
Yeah, but when I was 23, I definitely had life-altering spiritual experiences, because I failed so miserably in my life up to that point. And, financial bankruptcy was definitely part of it. And I climbed out, but you could, rebuild your credit real easy. And if
What
you
year
missed a
did you?
payment,
Yeah.
2004.
Okay. Yeah.
And then if you missed a payment, it wasn't a big deal. Like it wouldn't knock you all the way down. But now it's really, really sensitive.
Oh yeah, because they've given all this power to credit scores.
I don't
And it's like, if you rebuild your credit, in ways that are equal, like you're saving and paying off, or you do the bankruptcy and then you start, from a fresh start kind of thing. My philosophy is, you don't ever have to buy anything on credit. you can save up and be able to buy with cash. Like I've had my car, I paid off my car. So the Subaru I have is the first car I've ever owned that I bought brand new. So I paid it off. It's been 5-6 years since I've had a car loan.
And I
And
got enough money to buy a new one.
well, I did. It's an incredible car. And I had to take it into the shop because it was doing some weird, lights flashing stuff. So basically $5,000 later, I had like a brand new car inside, and I was driving it home from the dealer, and it completely cut off when I stopped at a stoplight. So I called them up and I'm like, I'm bringing it back. Well, it turned out I thought you said torque, but there's a torque. Yeah, the torque something, the torque response or something, I forget what she called it, in the transmission wasn't properly working. And it's something that a couple years ago in models, they changed the part because apparently this was a common thing. Well, most people apparently don't keep their Subarus for 11 years like I have, because it looks pretty brand new. I only have 130,000 miles on it. So
Really?
Yeah, so Subaru is
Wow.
paying for it, even though it's not a recall item. They're paying for it. So for the last 2 weeks, a brand new Subaru has been sitting in my driveway. We got snowed in, so I haven't driven it anywhere. But
Same model,
Friday,
just new year.
yeah, same model. Well, no, it's the lower end of the Subaru Outback because I got the high end because I bought it from a dealer who'd put 1,500 miles on it already. And I was like, I'll take that one. And I want all the depreciation gone. So I got a really good deal on it. So this one's I'm like, what? There's no remote start? If you're trying to entice me to buy a new Subaru, this is not the way.
That's a good add-on, though. That's an easy add-on.
No heated seat.
Oh, no.
No heated steering wheel. I'm like, come on, guys.
No, you can't do that. Not in Denver.
So yeah, I plan on putting another couple 100,000 on it and rebuilding the new car fund.
Might as well.
Yeah.
I like Dave Ramsey.
Choices like that, people get so caught up in, I need a new car, or I need this, that they start making decisions that get them back into financial trouble. So
I like Dave Ramsey's approach. He's pretty solid. He can be a little extreme though. Like he's like, just rice and beans. That's all you're eating. I'm
right.
Like, no.
He's also very anti-bankruptcy, which I find interesting since he declared bankruptcy to get back on a financial footing before he started his programs and stuff. So
yeah, I could see that being his story.
Like I tell people, Debtors Anonymous, people go in there and they're like, don't go bankrupt. And I'm like, look, if I hadn't gone bankrupt, I wouldn't have stayed sober. So, you use bankruptcy as a fresh start, and then you work the DA program and, spot on. So.
Yeah, I never had the courage to do it. Yep. I don't know why.
Because it can be a little scary. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
I think it's pride.
Program. Yeah.
It's what it was. It was pride.
Yep.
Usually my number one problem is excessive pride. Yeah. It comes in handy when you're doing a project and you want to be really good at it.
That's right.
But then after that, it's kind of like,
I don't need that. I mean, I was serious when I got into recovery because when I first started, I went out again after 60 days because I could con my sponsor. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm doing it right. So I went to not one, but 2 meetings every day. And I had 2 sponsors. One was a executive for Gymboree who moved out to San Francisco. And the other one was a former prostitute. So whatever I was going to do, I had to make sure I called both of them because I could, pull the wool over one of them's eyes, but not both of them, no matter what it was. So
I needed the village approach. I needed, 3 or 4. I had like an AA and then an Al-Anon and then a couple other people,
And I had a list. I want to say it was like 20 people. And if I even thought about picking up, I had to make sure I called every single person. And if I got a voicemail, I had to leave a message. If I got a live person, I had to talk to them. There was no 2 rings, hang up. I had to work the list. So
and I was never that disciplined. I was too afraid of people, to be honest.
But when you spend 4 days, in a coma and then 2 weeks in a city psych ward, and your option is stay sober or go to Bellevue, the Bellevue State Hospital, psyche ward, you get serious.
You get some motivation.
Yeah, I was highly motivated.
You said like when you woke up from your coma, you had this presence around you that you thought was, or you call it Jesus,
Yeah,
this safety and warmth. What did that become a powerful force in your life from that moment,
I think it did.
or
I
was it
mean,
always there? Or
I don't think it was. I mean, I never really paid attention to it. We didn't go to, we went for Easter and Christmas to churches and stuff. And then I started my junior year in high school, I guess. We lived in such a small town of 550 people. There was this adorable little church, country church. And so I started going to their adult Bible study class. And I think that's where I got my interest in theology. Because well before I became a minister, I was, more of a theologian. And the minister there would, I'd ask him a question. He'd be like, "That's a really good question. I got a book you should read." So he would never ever answer my questions. He'd just give me something to read that would spark the next book that I'd be like, "Okay, here's my next question." So I had that, like a deep spirituality. And I remember once before I wound up in my coma, I was laying on the floor of my apartment, and my girlfriend at the time was sitting there, and I was just laying there. I was like, "God, sometimes I feel like I'm Jesus." And her ex was a psychiatric nurse. And she
oh
goes,
no,
she goes, "Oh, that's interesting." She goes, "Please don't ever say that out loud in front of other people."
yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, but I think that opened the door toward, new thought, the
New thought.
oneness. Yeah, that
Describe
we
that. I don't
are all
think
one.
a lot of people don't know what new thought
Oh,
is.
so new thought is like, science of mind, religious science, divine science is my personal favorite, but the basic overriding tenet is, I'm one with everything, because God is everything and everywhere, and not like, the Christian version of God, but like that benevolent presence of light and love and stuff, and that it's all powerful, and it's all knowing, and therefore so am I. If I get into that stillness, that's the truth of who I am. And so by knowing that I already am everything, that means I already have everything, which created a really interesting consciousness in my mind. So I don't know if any of your podcast viewers have heard of Catherine Ponder, for example. She's a longtime Unity minister, has written like 20 books on prosperity. And it was one of her books that really changed my life. But I wrote a book called Giving Thanks, The Art of Tithing, that she wrote the forward to, and Gildan Media, your coach in a box. Those guys,
Mm.
they took over that title, and my new book, Manifest the Perfect Mate. The new cover is really cool because it has a guy. You can see the back of him. He's got his arms outstretched. And
Is that one
so
out now for sale?
check on Amazon, because I know that we just approved the new cover for the Manifest the Perfect Mate. But The Art of Tithing, they switched the subhead and the title on that book. So The Art of Tithing should be out already, because I think we approved that cover a couple months ago. So
Nice. I remember you sent me the rough draft for.
yeah, you were one of my readers.
Yeah, that felt really
Very
cool.
instrumental. You're mentioned in the book.
Am I really?
Yes, you are.
I gotta go read it now. I gotta buy 10 of them.
That's right. It's funny because I have like a small stack still of the one that New Thought Classics put out, but Gildan Media is putting it out now. So
Nice.
yep.
So New Thought is kind of a branch of Christianity,
Yeah,
maybe
they call
even
it
rooted.
practical Christianity.
Well, if you really get into it, you can see it represents Jesus's word directly from the gospel, not something
Yeah,
that's been interpreted to a modern church doesn't really interpret it that same way.
yeah.
Totally different foundation,
Oh
actually,
yeah.
I'm gonna say.
I don't remember which Unity book I was reading. Might have been like Teach Us to Pray or something. But in there, I used to get a lot of letters from people saying, I'm praying for you because you're not a real Christian and you're going to go to hell, because of your beliefs. And do you accept Jesus Christ as your savior? And so I'd write them back and I'd be like, actually, I do. But I think the way I interpret that might be different. And so I'd tell them the little line from Teach Us to Pray where it said, accepting Jesus Christ as your savior means being willing and ready to live your life as Jesus lived his, to come from that same mindset that he had of extending love into situations and coming from a place of peace. And I remember the first time I read it, I was in a coffee shop I'm just reading my little book, drinking my coffee, and all of a sudden I just blurt out loud, "I accept Jesus Christ as my savior." And everyone just like, I was like, "Oh, did I say that out loud?" I'm like, "Sorry, guys."
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's pretty clear. He's like, if you love me, do what I do. And
Yeah,
then, most of the people I know that, well, I don't want to be too judgmental, but often that's not the case,
yeah.
is what I found. Like it's not like there's a lot of room for misinterpretation
Nope.
in what he said.
It's real easy. But I think like the issue of like, love people as you love yourself, or do unto others as you do for unto yourself. The problem is most of us don't like ourselves. I was talking to a client, was it yesterday? Yesterday's Tuesday, right? And she was worried about, how someone else was perceiving her at work and stuff, and the value of her. And I said, well, who's the person that devalues yourself the most? And she was like, myself. And she's the one who talks trash. She was like, if anybody in my life talked to me the way I talk to myself, I'd be like, see ya. But that's what we do. We treat ourselves like crap. We're the ones who abandon ourselves. Whatever issue you got trust issues. I don't trust myself. I got abandonment issues. I abandon myself the most. I don't think other people are worthy of me. I don't think I'm worthy. It's just a nonstop reflection.
Yeah, it's Carl Jung's projection, right? Like that's his concept of projection.
Oh, did I remember I mentioned the therapist I had in New York? Jungian therapist, 3 years, personally trained by Robertson Davies. She was Canadian. He was personally trained by Jung.
Wow. What was that like? That always,
It was,
I'm
was
interested about
fascinating
that.
because, she had the couch and then she had the chair.
So you'd lay down?
No, I never would. I'd sit down on the couch and every week I'd go, okay, this is going to be the week I lay down. And I'd just sit there. She was like, you're not going to lay down, are you? I'm like, no. It's that trust thing, right? I was like, not
Vulnerable.
giving up the power. Yeah, I'm not laying where I can't see you. You kidding me? So yeah, 3 years I never once laid down on the couch.
Is it really in depth? Is there like a lot of imagery, symbology? Like, do they really analyze dreams, or how's that really work?
So I don't remember the dream analyzing, but I analyzed every minute point of my life up until that point. Like just broke it down so that I could see, where it wasn't those people out there that had done something to me, moving from the victim to, oh, wait a minute. These were the choices I made, and owning them without feeling guilty about it or beating myself up, just simply like, okay, I chose this. Would I choose that again now? And sometimes the answer was yes, because I wasn't ready yet. And other times it was like, no, I'd do this instead. So I learned so many coping skills.
Yeah, I really love I got a lot of help from therapy.
Yeah.
Mine was mindful based, kind of
Okay.
like a
Yeah.
DBT.
Yep.
And but my therapist was a PhD, and just we related very well intellectually, and so I needed that level of respect for my therapist. I needed to
Yeah.
have some kind of respect for someone.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I just, I'm arrogant. So I just roll my eyes and I'm like, oh, whatever.
I would just get quiet.
Well, that's when I'm judging them. Yeah. Like
Yes.
like Sandy does, like when she rolls her eyes, but she's not really rolling her eyes, and the whole room feels it. And we're like, oh. Yeah.
It's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. I like Jung. He's one of my favorites. I found it really difficult. It really applies when I'm judging people a lot. So like using the example I just expressed, someone I think is unintelligent. Do I really think this person is unintelligent, or do I think myself is unintelligent and incapable? And then, something I've always had the struggle with, and maybe someday when I'm more mature, I'll decide I'm choosing to make it last longer than it needs to, but getting in touch with it and like seeing it clearly for what like, oh shit, like this is mine, like that can take some time. And that, I find that really annoying.
Oh, yeah. I think I talked about it last week. You get to that place where you're like, I just once don't want to have to analyze the judgment I made about somebody else and look at, where do I do that to me? I just don't want to. you know.
The
But
solution is not to
yeah,
interact with people.
yeah.
That's just ignore
But
all
until
people.
you actually look at it and analyze it and you go, oh, that's where I do that to me, then it disappears.
Yeah.
It starts to just get weaker and weaker, and then suddenly it's gone. So you don't find
Yeah.
yourself having to judge.
Yeah. I kind of look at it like you get stuck in the lens, like with a
Mm,
certain set of glasses on that's all judgmental and like judging yourself. Like those are all projections, but when you meditate, you can achieve this state of like you're aware that you're doing it, but that's not you. Like it's
yeah.
just an old bad habit.
Yep.
It's still running on automatic.
And you can stop yourself in the process. You can start and you go, oh, did I ever tell you? And then you realize what you're going to do. And you're like, yeah, it wasn't important.
Yeah, I was going to slam this person verbally,
Yeah.
but now I'm not going
Yeah.
to.
But you know what? I'm just going to, just let it go.
I'm getting there again. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Takes practice. I
Yeah.
listen to my instincts about it.
Yeah.
Um, so what are your suggestions for people since you've overcome so much? And granted, you had some extreme experiences that maybe
Yes.
most people haven't, but it did change your mindset. How would you say you've cultivated that mindset into something that helps you on a daily basis?
Well, the first thing I did was just create some basic coping skills. Because when I kept trying to off myself, I had zero coping skills. Alcohol was my coping skill. So I started like, what do I like to do? So whenever I'd start to get upset, I'd take a walk. I'd call the list. You know, hot bubble baths. Things like that became like a go-to. Or if I wanted a drink, gin and tonic was my drink. So I'd make my little glass with my ice and my lime and my, only Schweppes because any other kind of tonic water is disgusting. And then I would just carry that around with me as if I had an actual drink, until I realized I didn't need that anymore. There was a period when I was writing, right when I got sober, when I realized I couldn't write because I was a smoker. So after a year of sobriety, I was also giving up smoking. So I was like, oh dear. So I literally, my sponsor was like, set yourself up at your typewriter, get your little tonic water with your lime, in your little tumbler you like, and then get your ashtray out and cinnamon sticks.
That's a good idea.
They're the right size. So I literally, I'd sit everything down. I'd put the cigarette, the cinnamon stick in the ashtray like it's a cigarette. And I'd have my sip and I'd start, I'd pick up my cinnamon stick and I put it in my lip. And then eventually it was like one of those old fashioned reporters, I've got the cinnamon stick in my mouth and I'm on a roll and I'm typing and typing. And then cinnamon sticks, if you've never held one in your mouth very long, will burn your lip.
Oh so yeah, I know cinnamon's spicy.
Like if you're smoking a cigarette and it burns down too close, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's what would happen.
The same thing.
Yeah. But like literally, I don't remember how long it took, but she would have me, set myself up and then call her. And she'd be like, okay, write for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it was, and call me back. So I'd sit in front of my it was a typewriter back then, not a computer. And I'd be like, this is boring. I can't type anything. I have no idea what to write, for 15 minutes.
Like stream of conscious?
Oh, yeah. Like this is the most stupid thing in the world, And then I'd call her. And then, and usually I was on deadline. So yeah, again, la, 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 smoke my little cinnamon stick, la, 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 call her again. And then eventually after a few cycles of this every single time, she wouldn't hear from me for several hours. And then I'd call and go, my draft's done, because eventually the stream of consciousness would flow into, well, let me just make a comment about this one piece about what I'm writing about. And then this other piece. And so eventually you get out of your head. And I think it was just stuff like that. The walking, the bubble bath, all that stuff just got me out of my head. And I also picked up my harmonica. I hadn't been playing my harmonica, and I picked that up. And I would wander around New York City playing my harmonica.
Outside?
Oh, yeah.
It's New York. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I dare you to do it in Denver.
That's right. I once walked up Broadway at 3 a.m. because I didn't realize that the subways, the buses stopped, but the subways were still going. And I'd been told, don't ever ride the subway at night. So I literally walked up Broadway, straight through Times Square, all the way up to Lincoln Center, to my friend's apartment. And the whole time I was just muttering to myself. I was just like, how many blocks do I have to go? Why did I stay at the club so late? Blah, 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 blah. And I'd see people like homeless people move across the street from me. And I'm like, oh, this is the way. Just pretend you're insane. Talk to yourself going up Broadway. Sweet.
Maybe you should write a book about that with the ever increasing homeless population now in New York.
That's right.
I heard they're in some serious trouble.
Oh, yeah.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. Even here in Denver.
Like all the fancy cities that used to be super desirable are.
Yep.
I'm a little worried about it just mostly because I'm selfish. I like going to those big cities and I really want to live there, but like, I don't think San Francisco is realistic unless I can make 250 a year or so.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's going to be tough.
Well,
maybe not.
Yeah. What's interesting here in Denver is, it used to be homeless people, maybe they had a tarp and, they'd have their shopping cart full of stuff and whatever, almost every single place you go, everyone's in tents, like nice tents. So I'm assuming people have donated tents and stuff because you don't see anybody out under just a tarp and stuff. Even the guys that camp in the woods over here by us till they get rousted are always in tents.
San Francisco's like that. They hand out sleeping bags and pretty much everything you need to live outside.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people that just won't go. When I lived in Boulder, I lived in the Folsom Tower, and there was next to a gas station, and I'd go over to the Red Box to get a book or something, or DVD. And there was this guy in a blizzard that was hunkered over by it. And I was like, dude, I said, do you need a lift to the shelter or something? He was like, oh, no. He said, I don't do the shelter. He said, the shelter is a scary place. He goes, I'm fine out here. And I was like, okay.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, those freight containers, you can chop those up and make, I don't know, probably 10 or 12 little shelters for people, individual shelters, but none of the city municipalities will let you because it's too much of a liability. And you can do it so cheap.
Yeah. And like abandoned schools that they've had out here in different places, each one of those could just be a room. They've got bathrooms and you can put showers in, and
yeah,
there's all sorts of solutions. So
yep, we'll figure it out someday.
Yep, one day.
We have to. Yeah.
When we are co-president.
We're going to run 2024.
There you go.
Yeah, the Leo ticket.
That's right. The Leonine party.
Yeah. Sandy's going to be our manager.
Oh, I like it. I like it.
Coop will be the canvasser. He'll go out, rile people up.
He can be our spokesperson.
Yeah.
We'll get the young people's vote.
Maybe. It's possible.
Well, I'm the irreverent Rev, so that,
I'm going to be the vice president. I'm just going to look creepy in the back like Pence.
Nice. Okay. So I'll be the president.
So we'll do that.
First thing I'm going to demand is I get my face on a coin.
No, you got to do that after.
Okay.
Unless you got enough money, I guess you could do it. I don't know. We're getting close to the 1 hour mark, and I know you're crazy busy.
Yep.
So if you had one thing to share with someone that you loved because you knew you weren't going to be around anymore tomorrow, what would that one thing be?
Ooh, good question. That one thing would be just go for it. Whatever the thing is that you want to do that you're afraid of doing, do it. I tell people when I had my publishing company and they'd write me with book ideas and stuff, I'm like, this is trite. This is overdone. I said, I want the book you're afraid to write. Take the leap. Because like you said, you don't know whether we'll be here or not. So, why not do it? Instead of being afraid of what other people will think or anything else like that, or I don't have the resources to do it, just do it. Start where you're at. Just do it. I mean, that's what I've done every day of my life since I got sober. And I think it's turning out pretty good.
So far, yeah.
Yeah, whenever something's like, I don't want to do this anymore, like when I decided I didn't want to do the channel anymore, New Thought channel, it was available on Roku, Apple, everywhere. And I was like, I'm done. We closed the channel. And then I had the publishing company. And I was in the middle of a conversation with Mitch Horowitz, an amazing writer, about one of the books that we put out for him. And he's like, okay, so what's next? Blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, yeah, I'm thinking of closing the company. And he was like, what? And I was like, I'm going to turn all your books over to you. And he's like, how about Gio at Gildan? And I was like, okay, let's talk to Gio. So Jill took my entire catalog.
Hmm.
So now I can write. And then Sandy's dad died, so a bunch of my time is spent managing his estate. So, it's
I didn't know he had an estate. What do you mean? Like a farm?
well, yeah, he has a farm. He had 2 businesses. He had a lot of other investments and accounts. He did a lot of what do you call them? Penny stock,
Really?
pre-IPO stuff, and he had the farm. He had a bunch of vehicles. He had the shop where the one company was at. So just a lot of details to
I
take
didn't know
care
he
of.
was that entrepreneurial. I knew he had a
Oh
farm.
yeah, yeah. He had when she was growing up, they used to do snow removal, and then he owned a bunch of low budget motels and apartments and stuff in DC,
No,
in
really? That's
Denver.
pretty cool.
Yeah, yep. So he was
Huh.
always doing that. So yeah, he's a cool guy.
Sounded
It's
like
just
it.
it takes a lot of time to if you don't. That's one of the things I teach people now. Make sure you name beneficiaries for all parts of your estate and put people's names on accounts and stuff. Because he didn't, we've had to put everything into the estate and then transfer it. So it's been a nightmare.
Oh, I bet.
And most people who are named executor or personal representative of someone's estate have no idea what's involved in closing the estate and filing an estate tax return and just all sorts of stuff that you don't need to think about. And that's one of the services I offer. So, it's all about mediation, negotiation, communication, all that stuff. So my second piece of advice would be speak your truth always, authentically.
Unless you're getting arrested.
Nope.
Bite that one. Well, thank you very much. I'm
Thanks
going
for
to leave you
having
with
me
a
on.
smiling face. Huh?
Thanks for having me on. And if
Yeah.
people want to find my stuff, it's
Oh,
paulalanguithryan.com. That's the easiest way to find me.
you're going to want to spell that.
It's on my little screen.
Is it? Does that
PAULALANGUTHRYAN.com.
does that come across when you record it, the little name?
I think so. They're on there. And you
Cool.
can also find me on Medium. I'm on no social media. I think I still have a LinkedIn account for business, but I have no social media. So LinkedIn, and then we have a YouTube channel for videos. So send me a
Also,
copy. We'll link, or send me the link from the YouTube. We'll link it on mine, and
it's the same channel, Paula Langguth Ryan.
I think so. Sarah knows all things.
Okay.
Sarah is the most amazing human being on the planet. She'll be listening to this, so I got to say that, but it's true. And she runs my world, my business world.
Nice.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for doing that for all of us.
Amen.
Bye, Paula.
Bye, Ryan. Thanks for having me on your show, hon.
Thank you for being here.